I'm Alison, 27, eldest daughter of the Mercer family. My brother Jake has always been the golden child, even now at 24. Since Dad lost his job, I've paid $9,600 every month to keep their lives afloat, while Jake contributes nothing. Today at Thanksgiving dinner, it all fell apart when Dad shouted those words that shattered my heart. "Get out. Paying bills doesn't make you family." Mum just whispered, "You're just jealous of your brother." That's when I smiled and said, "Then let him pay the $9,600. Before sharing my story, where are you watching from, hit subscribe, and like if family financial drama hits close to home. Growing up as the firstborn, Mercer expectations weighed heavily on my shoulders from day one. My parents, Richard and Diana Mercer, made it clear that I was to set the example, excel in school, and behave impeccably. Meanwhile, my younger brother Jake operated under an entirely different set of rules. "Jake's still finding his way," Mum would say whenever he brought home mediocre grades. Dad would ruffle his hair affectionately, adding, "Boys will be boys." The same performance from me would have resulted in grounding and extra study hours. This pattern established itself early and only deepened with time. By high school, I was maintaining a 4.0 GPA, participating in student government, and working part-time at the local library. Jake barely passed classes but excelled at sports and social life, which somehow mattered more to my parents. They never missed his football games, but frequently had conflicts during my academic competitions. When college applications rolled around, I received scholarships but not enough to cover everything. "We'll help as much as we can," Dad promised, "but you know how to work hard." For Jake, 2 years later, they dipped into their retirement savings to ensure he had the full college experience, without needing to work. Throughout my college years, I juggled 3 jobs tutoring waiting tables and administrative work for a professor. My phone would ring with Jake's laughter in the background of crowded parties. "Sis, you should really learn to live a little," he'd say before asking me to proofread his essays or send him emergency cash. Despite the challenges, I graduated with honours and landed a position at a respected financial consulting firm in our hometown of Westridge. My starting salary wasn't impressive, but I built my reputation quickly through dedication and financial acumen. Within 5 years, I'd been promoted twice and established myself as someone to watch in the industry. Jake, meanwhile, bounced between 6 different majors before settling on business administration, graduating 2 years late. Since then, he's worked at a sporting goods store, tried starting a podcast about local nightlife, briefly sold insurance, and most recently landed a commission-based role selling luxury cars that he describes as about to take off any day now. Our divergent paths might have remained a family quirk if financial disaster hadn't struck 3 years ago. Dad, who'd worked as a manager at a manufacturing plant for 20 years, lost his job when the company downsized. At 57, with an outdated skill set and health issues including diabetes and high blood pressure, his prospects were bleak. "It's just temporary," he assured everyone. "I've got leads." But weeks turned to months with only a few interviews and no offers. Mum had always worked part-time as a school administrative assistant, but her salary barely covered groceries, let alone their mortgage and mounting medical bills. That's when I stepped in. "Let me help until you get back on your feet," I offered, calculating what I could spare from my salary and savings. Initially, it was just covering their mortgage for a few months. Then came property taxes, medical insurance premiums, utility bills, car payments, credit card minimums, Dad's medications. Each time the assistance was framed as temporary, each time it became permanent. The monthly total eventually reached $9,600, more than 2/3 of my take-home pay. Jake's contribution to the family crisis, occasional grocery runs, and empty promises. "Once this commission hits, I'll take over the car payment," he'd say, or "I'm due for a big bonus next quarter." These promises evaporated like morning fog, yet my parents never pressed him. "Jake's still establishing himself," Mum would explain, as if I hadn't also been building my career. "He doesn't have your financial security," Dad would add, though any security I had came from my own efforts, not family advantage. The first significant conflict erupted when I discovered my parents had lent Jake $3,000 from money I'd given them for property taxes. "He had an opportunity that couldn't wait," Dad explained, refusing to meet my eyes. "And you know we're good for it." But they weren't good for it. The money never returned, the property tax bill came due, and I covered it again. When I tried discussing financial boundaries, Mum would tear up and Dad would shut down the conversation with, "Family helps family." The irony of that statement would eventually become painfully clear. As months became years, my resentment grew alongside my bank account's depletion. My own dreams, homeownership, travel, eventually starting a family, remained on hold while I bankrolled my parents' lives, and by extension, Jake's carefree existence. Yet I continued motivated by love, obligation, and the hope that something would eventually change. I didn't realize that change would require me to ignite it myself. The week before Thanksgiving marked 3 years since I'd begun supporting my parents financially. What started as temporary assistance had morphed into a seemingly permanent arrangement that drained my finances and emotional reserves. The breaking point began building gradually, like water pressure behind a weakening dam. It started with a phone call from Dad on Monday morning. "Allison, sweetheart," he began, using the tone that invariably preceded a financial request. "Your mother and I were thinking about Thanksgiving. We want to make it special this year." By special, I soon learned he meant expensive. They needed an additional $800 beyond their usual monthly support for new table linens, upgraded cookware, gourmet ingredients, and a premium turkey. I agreed, though it meant postponing a dental procedure I'd been saving for. "There's one more thing," Dad added before hanging up. "Jake's bringing someone special this year. Natalie? Sounds serious." The news of Jake's girlfriend coming for Thanksgiving didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was arriving at my parents' house 2 days later to drop off the requested money and finding workmen delivering new dining room furniture. "What's all this?" I asked Mom, who was supervising the placement of an expensive-looking table and chairs. "Just sprucing things up a bit," she replied, avoiding my eyes. "First impressions matter, and we want Natalie to feel welcome." The price tags I glimpsed suggested they'd spent well over $2,000. When I questioned how they'd afforded it, Mum waved dismissively. "Your father managed the finances. You know how resourceful he is." That evening, I checked the online pharmacy account I'd set up for Dad's prescriptions. His monthly heart medication refill had been cancelled. A quick call to the pharmacy confirmed my suspicion the payment had been declined due to insufficient funds. The money I'd provided specifically for his medication had been diverted to impress Jake's girlfriend. I drove to my parents' house immediately, finding them arranging decorative gourds on their brand new dining table. "Dad, we need to talk about your medication." I began explaining what I'd discovered. His face flushed. "It's just for a few days. The doctor said it's fine to miss a dose or two." "No doctor said that," I countered. "This medication keeps you alive." Mum intervened. "Don't be dramatic, Allison. Your father knows his body, and we needed to make the house presentable." For Jake's girlfriend at the expense of Dad's health, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You wouldn't understand," Dad said dismissively. "When you bring someone special home, you'll get it." The implication that I had known someone special because of some personal failing, rather than because my resources were entirely consumed by supporting them, stung sharply. I tried a different approach. "Let's sit down and review the monthly budget I've created. There's a way to manage unexpected expenses without compromising essential needs." Dad stood abruptly. "We're not children who need allowances and supervision. We've raised 2 kids and managed a household longer than you've been alive. And yet here we are," I replied softly, regretting the words as soon as they left my mouth. The conversation deteriorated from their ending with me leaving the medication I'd picked up and then promising vaguely to be more careful with funds in the future. As I drove home, my phone pinged with a text from Jake. "Hey sis, quick question. What's your jeweler friend's name again? Looking at rings for Natalie. Thinking about popping the question at Christmas. Also, any chance you could spot me for it? Around 5K big commission coming next month. I swear." I nearly drove off the road. $5,000 for an engagement ring when he couldn't contribute a dime to our parents' expenses. I didn't respond. That night, my best friend Sarah called for our weekly catch-up. After listening to my recounting of the day's events, she said what no one else would. "Allison, they're using you, all 3 of them, and they'll keep doing it until you draw a line." "Their family?" I replied automatically. "Family doesn't exploit family," Sarah countered. "What would you tell a client in your situation?" She was right. If a financial consulting client presented my scenario, I'd identify it immediately as financial abuse and recommend immediate boundary setting. Why couldn't I follow my own professional advice? The next few days passed in a blur of work and emotional turmoil. I purchased an expensive bottle of wine for Thanksgiving dinner and agreed to arrive early to help cook. Professional habit had me calculating the cumulative financial support I'd provided. $345,600 over 3 years, not including extras like holiday expenses and emergency repairs. Thanksgiving Day arrived crisp and sunny. I spent the morning preparing side dishes in my apartment, practicing diplomatic responses to inevitable questions about my love life and career choices, while ignoring the growing knot of tension in my stomach. I arrived at 1 o'clock, arms laden with food and wine. Mum accepted my offerings with cursory thanks before returning to her preparations for Jake's arrival. Dad watched football in the living room, occasionally shouting updates about the score as if nothing were amiss between us. At 3 o'clock exactly, the doorbell rang. Mum practically ran to answer it. "They're here." "Come," she announced, unnecessarily voice-pitched with excitement I hadn't heard, directed at me in years. Jake entered with his arm around a tall, willowy blonde wearing designer clothes and a practiced smile. "Everyone, this is Natalie," he announced proudly. Mum embraced them both. Dad turned off the television immediately and rose to shake Natalie's hand. "We've heard so much about you," he said warmly. I introduced myself last, noting they had arrived empty-handed, despite the customary expectation of bringing something to a holiday dinner. Neither Jake nor my parents seemed to notice or care. The stage was set for the confrontation that would change everything. The Thanksgiving table looked like something from a lifestyle magazine. Mum had outdone herself with the new table settings, crystal glasses, and elaborate centerpiece. The turkey glistened golden brown, surrounded by all the traditional fixings, plus several gourmet additions that I recognized from celebrity chef recipes. We settled into our seats, Jake pulling out Natalie's chair with flourish, while regaling everyone with a story about a wealthy client who'd just purchased a custom luxury vehicle from him. Dad listened with rapt attention, asking detailed questions that he'd never bothered to ask about my work. Mum kept refilling Natalie's glass and complimenting everything from her earrings to her manicure. I sat quietly pouring myself a generous glass of the wine I'd brought, observing the family dynamics, as if from a distance. It felt like watching a play where everyone had a scripted role except me. Dad carved the turkey with ceremony, giving Jake and Natalie the choicest portions, before serving Mum and finally me. As we began eating, the conversation flowed around mundane topics. The unseasonably warm weather, the football game's surprising outcome, Natalie's work as a pharmaceutical sales representative. "The commission structure is incredible," she explained. "I'm on track to clear 6 figures this year." Mum gasped appreciatively. "That's wonderful, isn't it, Richard?" Dad nodded enthusiastically. "Smart and successful. Jake's found himself a winner." I noticed Jake shifting slightly in his seat, his expression flickering briefly before he smiled broadly. "Speaking of winners," he announced, reaching for Natalie's hand, "we have some news." My stomach tightened. He wouldn't propose at Thanksgiving dinner, would he? Especially after texting me about needing money for a ring. "We're planning a destination wedding," Jake declared. "Next June in Bali. We're thinking an intimate affair, just 30 or 40 of our closest friends and family." Natalie beamed. "The resort Jake found is absolute paradise. Private villas over crystal blue water, 5-star everything. I've always dreamed of seeing Bali." Mum sighed happily. "Then it's settled," Dad proclaimed, raising his glass. To Jake and Natalie's Bali wedding, everyone clinked glasses except me. I was mentally calculating the cost of such an extravagant event, easily $70,000 at minimum, while wondering if Jake had somehow secured a loan or if he was expecting yet another miraculous commission to materialize. "You're quiet, Alison." Mum noted a slight edge to her voice. I took a measured sip of wine before responding. "Just curious about the logistics. Destination weddings are expensive," Jake waved dismissively. "We've got it covered." "That's wonderful," I replied carefully. "Does that mean you won't need financial help for the ring anymore?" A heavy silence fell over the table. Natalie looked questioningly at Jake, who flushed deep red. "What ring?" she asked. Jake laughed unconvincingly. "Just exploring options, nothing concrete." Dad cleared his throat loudly. "Money discussions can wait for another day. This is a celebration. Actually," I continued, surprising myself with my steady voice, "I think this is the perfect time to discuss finances since we're all together." "Alison," Mum warned. "No, really," I insisted. "I'm curious how a Bali wedding fits into our current financial situation, especially when Dad had to skip heart medication last week to pay for this table." Natalie's eyes widened. Jake's jaw clenched. Dad slammed his hand on the table, causing the crystal to rattle. "That's enough," he shouted. "Is it?" I counted years of suppressed frustration finally breaking free. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like we're celebrating spending more money we don't have while I work 60-hour weeks to keep this family afloat. "No one asked you to do that," Jake muttered. "Actually, everyone did, repeatedly." I turned to Natalie. "Did Jake tell you he lives rent-free in an apartment I pay for, or that his car payment comes from me via our parents?" "Allison, stop at this instant," Mom hissed. Natalie looked increasingly uncomfortable. Jake told me he was financially independent. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Jake hasn't been financially independent a day in his adult life. Neither have our parents since Dad lost his job. "I've been looking," Dad protested. "The market's tough for someone my age." "For 3 years," I challenged. "Without a single part-time position or consulting gig. Not everyone can be perfect like you," Jake snapped. "Perfect? I'm not perfect. I'm exhausted. Do you know how much I've spent supporting this family since Dad lost his job? $345,600. That's $9,600 every month." The table fell silent. Even Jake looked stunned by the figure. "That's not possible," Mum whispered. I pulled out my phone and opened a spreadsheet. Mortgage $2,400. Property taxes $600 monthly equivalent. Car payments $800 combined. Insurance $1,200. Utilities $700. Credit card minimums $900. Medications and healthcare $1,100. Groceries and miscellaneous $1,900. Total $9,600 every month for 3 years. Natalie stared at Jake, who couldn't meet her eyes. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Nobody asked you to keep track, like we're some charity case." "I keep track because I'm a financial consultant. It's what I do." My voice remained steady despite my racing heart. "And because it's my money." "It's family money," Mom insisted. "We would do the same for you." "Would you? When have you ever?" I challenged. "Everything I've achieved I've done without help while watching Jake get endless support and second chances." Jake stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I contribute plenty." "Name one bill you've paid in the last year," I replied. "One mortgage payment, one medical expense." His silence was answer enough. Dad slammed his napkin down and stood pointing toward the door. "Get out," he growled, voice shaking with rage. "Get out right now. Paying bills doesn't make you family." The words hit like physical blows. I sat frozen, unable to process that. After everything I'd sacrificed, I was being expelled from Thanksgiving dinner for simply stating financial facts. Mum leaned over, her voice a venomous whisper. "You're just jealous of your brother. You always have been." Something inside me that had been bending for years finally broke clean. I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me as I stood gathering my purse. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. "Then let him pay the $9,600. I walked out, leaving my coat, my prepared side dishes, and 3 years of financial servitude behind me. The door slammed with finality as I stepped into the cold November air, tears freezing on my cheeks as I made my way to my car. Behind me, through the window, I could see the tableau of my family. Dad gesticulating wildly, Mum with her head in her hands, Jake looking shell-shocked, and Natalie gathering her things with quick, efficient movements that suggested she wouldn't be staying for pumpkin pie. As I drove away, I knew with absolute certainty what I needed to do next. The 20-minute drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and tears. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but my mind had achieved an unexpected clarity. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, I'd moved from shock to determination. Inside, I kicked off my heels and went straight to my home office. The walls were lined with financial planning certificates and industry awards. External validation that I understood money, even if I'd failed to apply that knowledge to my own family situation. I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking dashboard. For 3 years, I'd organized my finances around my family's needs, automatic transfers for their mortgage and car payments, direct deposits to their checking account. Automatic bill, pay for utilities and insurance policies. Joint credit card accounts I'd added myself to in order to help manage their debt. Now I would dismantle it all. I started methodically, beginning with the mortgage. I called the after-hours customer service line for their mortgage company. "I need to cancel the automatic payment scheduled for December 1st, I informed the representative. "May I ask why?" the young man inquired. The arrangement has been terminated, I replied, surprising myself with how businesslike I sounded. One by one, I cancelled automatic payments, electric bill, water bill, internet service, cable, television, car, insurance, health insurance, supplements, cell phone family plan. Some required phone calls, others I could handle online. With each cancellation, I felt a weight lifting incrementally from my shoulders. Next came the joint credit cards. I removed myself as an authorised payer while keeping my name on the accounts temporarily to avoid immediately damaging their credit scores even further. I set up email alerts to notify me of any attempts to make charges to the cards. The checking and savings accounts were trickier. We had established joint access when the financial support began with the understanding that I would deposit funds and they would use them for approved expenses. Now I transferred the remaining balances, roughly $4,000 combined, to my personal account, leaving enough only for a week of basic necessities. By midnight, I had compiled a comprehensive spreadsheet documenting every penny I'd contributed over 3 years, organised by category and month, with annotations for extra expenses like holiday gifts, emergency home repairs and specialised medical treatments not covered by insurance. I attached payment receipts, bank statements and transfer confirmations. I composed an email to my parents and Jake with the subject line, Financial Support Termination, copying Natalie as well. The message was brief and professional. As discussed at Thanksgiving dinner, I am no longer in a position to provide financial support. Attached is documentation of past contributions totaling $345,600 over 3 years. All automatic payments have been cancelled, effective immediately. Joint accounts will be formally separated within 30 days. Please make alternative arrangements for December obligations. I remain available to provide financial planning advice if requested. I hesitated before hitting send, memories flooding back Dad, teaching me to ride a bike, Mum nursing me through childhood illnesses, family vacations before Jake was born when I had been enough. Even Jake, building snowmen together, his gap-toothed smile when I helped with his first grade homework. Then more recent memories surfaced, Dad checking his watch repeatedly during my graduate school commencement, Mum forgetting my 30th birthday while planning an elaborate surprise party for Jake's 27th. Jake borrowing my car and returning it with an empty tank and mysterious dents. I pressed send. Almost immediately, my phone began ringing. Mum, then Dad, then Jake. Text messages followed in rapid succession. Mum, you can't be serious. Call me immediately. Dad. This is going too far. We need to talk. Jake. WTF, Allison? Mum's crying. Fix this now. I silenced my phone and placed it face down on my desk. The expected guilt didn't materialize. Instead, I felt hollowed out, exhausted, yet oddly peaceful. I ran a bath, adding expensive essential oils I usually rationed carefully. While the tub filled, I calculated how much money would remain in my monthly budget without family obligations. The figure was staggering. I could save for a home down payment, take an actual vacation, invest properly for retirement. Sinking into the hot water, I let myself cry one last time, not for what I'd done, but for what I'd lost. The illusion of family, the belief that sacrifice equaled love, the hope that someday, somehow, my contribution would be truly acknowledged and appreciated. As dawn broke, I hadn't slept, but I'd achieved something more valuable: clarity. I was finally free from emotional manipulation disguised as family obligation. The guilt and confusion that had plagued me for years had dissipated like morning fog. My doorbell rang at 7:30. I opened it to find Sarah holding a tray with 2 large coffees and a bag of pastries from our favourite bakery. I figured you might need reinforcements, she said, taking in my exhausted appearance. How bad was it? I stepped aside to let her in. They kicked me out of Thanksgiving dinner for mentioning how much money I give them. Dad actually said paying bills doesn't make you family. Sarah's expression hardened. What did you do? For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled genuinely. I shut everything down. By 9 in the morning, my phone had accumulated 37 missed calls, 28 voicemails, and over 60 text messages. The progression was telling disbelief turned to anger, then threats followed by panic, and finally, desperate pleas. I sat at my kitchen counter with Sarah methodically documenting each communication. The early messages from Dad were particularly vicious. You ungrateful child, after everything we've done for you. I faint. You've always been selfish. This proves it. If you don't fix this immediately, don't bother calling yourself our daughter. Mum's messages attempted guilt first, then medical emergencies. How could you do this to your own parents? We raised you better. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of you. If something happens to him, it's on your conscience. I had to borrow anxiety medication from the neighbor. Is this what you wanted? Jake vacillated between rage and sudden financial enlightenment. You've ruined everything with Natalie. She's reconsidering the relationship because of your lies. You know I can't afford an apartment on my own right now. Maybe we could work out a payment plan where I start covering some of my own expenses. Around 10 o'clock, the tone shifted dramatically when services began to be affected. The internet was the first to go. Apparently they hadn't paid their bill in months despite my providing funds specifically for it. The automatic payment I'd cancelled was the only thing keeping the service active. Dad's next voicemail was notably different. Allison, please. We need to talk about this like adults. The internet is down, and your mother has a virtual doctor's appointment this afternoon. I didn't respond. Sarah squeezed my hand supportively as we sorted through the mounting evidence of emotional manipulation. By noon, a new development extended family getting involved. Calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins, most of whom I spoke to only at holidays, suddenly deeply concerned about my mental health and family crisis. It became clear my parents were calling everyone painting me as the villain. The unexpected ally came in the form of Aunt Carol, Dad's sister, who had always maintained a polite but distant relationship with my parents. Her text was refreshingly direct. Allison, I just heard from your mother. Reading between the lines of her hysteria, it sounds like you've finally stood up for yourself. If that's the case, I'm proud of you. Call me if you need backup. I called her immediately, pouring out the whole story while Sarah prepared lunch. Aunt Carol listened without interruption, occasionally making sounds of understanding or outrage. I'm not surprised, she finally said when I finished. Your father has always been financially irresponsible, even as a teenager. Our parents bailed him out constantly. Then he married your mother, who enables his worst tendencies, and they've raised Jake in the same pattern. Why didn't you ever say anything? I asked. Would you have believed me? We all have to learn these lessons ourselves. Her voice softened. I tried to model different behavior when you visited us. I noticed you were different, more responsible, more aware. I hoped you'd break the cycle. By bankrolling them for 3 years, I laughed bitterly. By eventually reaching your breaking point, she corrected, which you have. Now hold your ground. After we hung up, I felt reinforced in my resolve. The universe seemed to agree as my doorbell rang again. This time it was a police officer. Ms. Allison Mercer, he asked formally. Yes, I replied, heart suddenly racing. Is everything okay? We received a call from a Richard Mercer requesting a wellness check. He was concerned about your mental state and indicated possible self-harm risk. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. I'm fine, as you can see. My friend Sarah is here, and I've been in contact with family all morning. The officer nodded clearly, recognizing the situation for what it was. Family disputes can get messy. Would you like to file a report about harassing communications? Some of the messages you've received might qualify. I was touched by his perceptiveness, but shook my head. Not at this time, but thank you. As he left, he paused. Just so you know, false wellness check reports can be prosecuted if they become a pattern of harassment. Something to keep in your back pocket. I had barely closed the door when my phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Allison? It was Natalie, Jake's girlfriend. Can we talk? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop 3 miles from my apartment. Sarah offered to come, but this felt like a conversation I needed to have alone. Natalie was already waiting when I arrived, looking considerably less polished than she had at Thanksgiving dinner. Her eyes were puffy, her designer outfit replaced by jeans and a sweater. Thank you for meeting me, she began awkwardly. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I had no idea about your family's financial situation. Jake never mentioned it. I asked, though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. He told me his parents were comfortable retirees and that he was doing well at the dealership. He said you were the family overachiever who liked to control everything. The description stung but didn't surprise me. And now I'm reconsidering everything. She twisted a napkin between manicured fingers. After you left, everything fell apart. Your mum started crying. Your dad was shouting and Jake was making excuses that didn't add up. I left pretty quickly. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle, I said sincerely. Don't be. I needed to know. She hesitated. Jake showed up at my apartment this morning asking to stay with me because he can't afford his place without your help. When I questioned him about the wedding plans, he admitted he was counting on a loan from your parents, who were counting on you. The audacity was breathtaking. What did you tell him? To grow up. She smiled ruefully. Then I asked him to leave. I've worked too hard building my career to hitch myself to someone who can't stand on his own feet. We parted with an unexpected hug, two women freeing themselves from the same toxic dynamic. I had just returned to my apartment when the final confrontation of the day arrived, Jake pounding on my door loudly enough to disturb the neighbors. I know you're in there, he shouted. Open up or I'm calling the police. I opened the door, keeping the security chain latched. The police have already been here thanks to Dad's false wellness check. Would you like to file a false report too? I understand that's a crime. His face was flushed with anger or alcohol or both. You've ruined everything. Natalie dumped me. Mum won't stop crying. Dad's talking about selling the house. Those sound like consequences of long-term financial irresponsibility, not my actions, I replied calmly. You know I can't afford my apartment without your help, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. I need $2,000 by Monday or I'm evicted. What happened to the big commission you were expecting? I asked. The one that was going to pay for a $5,000 engagement ring. He looked away. I needed that money for other things. What things, Jake? Just stuff. Bills and things. His evasiveness triggered my professional instincts. Gambling debts. I guessed, watching his expression carefully. The flicker in his eyes confirmed it. How much do you owe? $17,000, he admitted after a long pause. But I've got a system now. I just need a stake to win it back. The familiar refrain of every gambling addict I'd counseled professionally. No. What? No money, not for your apartment, not for gambling, not for anything. His expression darkened. You're really going to let your own brother end up homeless. You have choices, Jake. Get a roommate, move to a cheaper apartment, take a second job. Talk to a gambling addiction counselor. All better options than continuing to drain me dry. Mum and Dad were right about you, he spat. You've always been cold. Calculating. No wonder you're alone. I closed the door in his face, his last attack finding its mark despite my resolve. I leaned against the wall, listening to his retreating footsteps and wondering if the hollow victory of financial freedom was worth the complete rupture of my family relationships. Then I remembered Dad's words, "Get out. Paying bills doesn't make you family." If that was true, then perhaps we had never been a real family at all. 1 week after the Thanksgiving disaster, I received a text message from Mum. Family meeting, our house, Saturday at 2 p.m. Please come. My immediate instinct was to refuse, but Sarah and Aunt Carol both encouraged me to hear them out. Go in with clear boundaries, Sarah advised. Don't commit to anything financial without taking time to consider it. Aunt Carol was more blunt. Take someone with you. Don't let them gang up on you again. I asked Sarah to accompany me, and she agreed without hesitation. When we arrived at my parents' house exactly at 2, I noticed Jake's car already in the driveway. My stomach tightened as Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly. Remember, you hold the power here, she whispered as we walked to the door. Mum answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the window. Her appearance shocked me. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in a week. The house behind her was noticeably colder than usual. They must have turned the heating down to save money. Allison, she said stiffly, then noticed Sarah. I didn't realize you were bringing someone. Sarah's here for support, I replied, simply stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. In the living room, Dad sat in his recliner, looking deflated, his usual commanding presence diminished. Jake occupied the sofa, disheveled and unshaven. The atmosphere was tense and unfamiliar. This family gathering lacked the usual pretense of harmony. Thank you for coming, Dad began formally, as if addressing a business associate rather than his daughter. We wanted to discuss the current situation. Which situation specifically? I asked, taking a seat with Sarah beside me. My withdrawal of financial support or the things said at Thanksgiving dinner? Mum perched on the arm of Dad's chair. Both, I suppose. Things got out of hand, and words were said in the heat of the moment. Get out. Paying bills doesn't make you family, I quoted. Those didn't feel like heat-of-the-moment words, Dad. They felt like your honest opinion. Dad had the decency to look ashamed. I was angry. So was I replied. 3 years of financial support met with accusations of jealousy and selfishness would make anyone angry. An uncomfortable silence filled the room until Jake broke it. Look, we all know why we're here. The utilities are getting shut off one by one. Dad's medication is running out. I'm facing eviction. We need to figure something out. What have you figured out so far? I asked, maintaining a calm, almost professional demeanor. It's been a week. What steps have you taken to address your financial situation? They exchanged glances, and I realized they had expected this meeting to focus on when and how I would resume financial support, not on their own efforts or accountability. I've applied for 3 jobs, Dad finally offered. Part-time positions that would work with my health limitations. I've called about refinancing the mortgage, Mum added. But our credit scores are too low without you as a co-signer. Jake stared at his shoes. I've been talking to a financial counselor about my gambling problem. This last admission surprised me. That's a positive step, I acknowledged. Encouraged, Jake continued. Natalie put me in touch with her cousin who works in addiction services. I had my first Gamblers Anonymous meeting yesterday. I nodded, a tiny seed of hope sprouting that perhaps some genuine change might be possible. We've also been making a budget, Mum said, producing a handwritten sheet filled with numbers. We're trying to understand where all the money goes. I glanced at the paper, immediately spotting several missing expense categories and unrealistic projections. Years of professional experience made me want to correct it, to help them create a workable financial plan. But I restrained myself, remembering Sarah's advice about clear boundaries. These are good first steps, I said carefully, but you need a comprehensive financial overhaul, not just a budget. Dad leaned forward. That's why we wanted to talk to you. You're the expert. Help us figure this out. To be clear, I said, making eye contact with each of them, I'm not here to discuss resuming financial support. That chapter is closed. But your father's medications, Mum began, can be covered by patient assistance programs, I interrupted, which he would qualify for based on current income. And the mortgage, Dad tried, is too expensive for your current financial reality. I completed firmly. You may need to consider downsizing or taking in a renter for the spare room. Jake shifted uncomfortably. What about my apartment? Get a roommate, I suggested, or move back here temporarily while you sort out your gambling issues. Their faces registered the dawning realization that I truly wasn't going to rescue them this time. The atmosphere grew tense again. So that's it? Dad asked, voice rising. 3 years of support, and now you just walk away when things get tough. I felt Sarah tense beside me, ready to intervene, but I remained calm. Things have been tough for 3 years, Dad. I didn't walk away. I was thrown out and told I wasn't family. I told you I was angry, he shouted, face reddening. And I'm hurt. I finally raised my voice to match his. Do you have any idea what it feels like to sacrifice everything for people who don't even appreciate it, who actually resent you for it, who treat the person causing the financial strain better than the one relieving it? The room fell silent again. Mum looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Jake examined his hands as if they held answers. I have a proposition, I said, finally pulling a folder from my bag. I won't give you money, but I will give you information. I handed each of them a personalized financial plan I had prepared over the past week. Dad's included information on unemployment benefits. He hadn't applied for patient assistance programs for his medications and part-time work options suitable for his health conditions. Mum's contained household budget restructuring, potential income opportunities, and expense reduction strategies. Jake's addressed gambling addiction resources, affordable housing options, and a debt repayment schedule. I spent 15 hours creating these plans, I explained. They're realistic if you're willing to make significant changes. They leafed through the documents with varying expressions of surprise, resistance, and reluctant acknowledgement. This would mean selling the house, Dad noted, voice hollow. Yes, I confirmed. You're underwater on the mortgage and it's your largest expense. And I'd need to move back home, Jake realized. Temporarily, I emphasized, while you address the gambling and rebuild your finances. This is a lot to process, Mum said, closing her folder. Take time to review it. I suggested, standing to indicate the meeting was concluding on my terms. I'm available to answer questions about implementation, but not to provide funding. As Sarah and I prepared to leave, Dad suddenly spoke, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I'm sorry, Alison. What I said at Thanksgiving, I was wrong. You've been more family to us than we deserved. The simple acknowledgement after years of thankless sacrifice loosened something tight in my chest. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. Mum stepped forward awkwardly. "We took advantage of your generosity. I can see that now." Jake couldn't quite meet my eyes, but mumbled, "Thanks for the financial plan, and for not totally abandoning us." Their gratitude felt bittersweet, coming only after the money stopped, not during the years I'd provided it. Still, it was more acknowledgement than I'd received in 3 years of support. "This isn't about punishment," I clarified as we reached the door. "It's about breaking an unhealthy pattern for everyone's benefit." Enabling financial irresponsibility isn't helping any of us in the long run. As Sarah and I walked to my car, she asked, "How do you feel?" I considered the question carefully. Like I've set down something incredibly heavy that I've been carrying so long, I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. We drove away from the house that had once been home, leaving behind the weight of unreasonable expectations and unbalanced love. 3 months passed, bringing crisp winter weather and unexpected changes. My life transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined that fateful Thanksgiving night when I'd shut everything down. The most immediate change was financial. Without the crushing burden of supporting 3 additional adults, my bank account flourished. I purchased my first home, a modest but charming 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood I'd previously only dreamed about. I started proper retirement contributions, built an emergency fund, and even planned a summer vacation to Portugal. Professional growth followed, freed from constant financial anxiety and 60-hour work weeks. Needed to support 2 households, I had mental space to pursue advanced certifications. My firm recognized my renewed focus and energy with a promotion to senior consultant, bringing both prestige and a substantial salary increase. Perhaps most surprisingly, I began dating again. Thomas, a landscape architect I met through a client, brought unexpected warmth and balance to my life. Unlike previous relationships that had withered under the strain of my family obligations, this one flourished in the healthy soil of my newfound boundaries. As for my family, the changes there were slower but significant. Dad found part-time work as a consultant for a small manufacturing business, bringing in modest but consistent income. The position accommodated his health needs while utilizing his decades of experience. "Should have done this 2 years ago," he admitted during one of our now monthly phone calls. Mum took in a renter, a quiet graduate student who occupied Jake's old room, and started providing after-school childcare for neighborhood families. The extra income allowed them to keep the house, though they'd needed to refinance with Aunt Carol's help. Jake's transformation was the most dramatic. After 2 months in Gamblers Anonymous and moving back to my parents' house, he secured a steady job in sales for a commercial cleaning company. The position offered lower pressure than luxury car sales, but provided stable income with realistic targets. He'd even started dating again, though not Natalie, who had moved on completely. The journey wasn't smooth. There were tearful phone calls, occasional backsliding, and moments when I questioned my decisions. The first major test came when Dad needed dental surgery not covered by insurance. The old pattern would have been an immediate transfer from my account to theirs. Instead, I helped them set up a payment plan and suggested Dad take a few extra consulting hours. "I can handle this myself," he told me with unexpected pride. "You were right. I was capable of more than I believed." By spring, we had established a new normal. Our interactions focused on emotional connection rather than financial transactions. We talked about books, current events, weekend plans, conversations that had been crowded out by constant money crises. Without the power imbalance of financial dependence, we were slowly discovering who we might be as a family of equals. The true test came at Christmas, 3 months after Thanksgiving. I invited everyone to my new condo for dinner, a deliberate choice that symbolized both my independence and willingness to rebuild relationships on new terms. They arrived bearing homemade dishes rather than empty hands. Mum brought her signature casserole, Dad contributed wine that was modest but thoughtfully selected, and Jake arrived with dessert and a board game. The atmosphere held initial awkwardness, but warmed as the evening progressed. After dinner, while Jake helped clear plates, Dad approached me on the balcony, where I'd stepped out for a moment alone. "Your place is beautiful," he said, gesturing to the view of the city lights. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you," I replied, accepting both the compliment and the implicit acknowledgement that my success was my own achievement. He shifted uncomfortably, looking older and more vulnerable than I remembered. "I owe you a proper apology for what I said at Thanksgiving. Get out paying bills doesn't make you family." Those words haunt me. They haunted me too, I admitted. I was wrong, he continued. So wrong. You were the only one truly acting like family, sacrificing for people you love without expecting anything in return, while we just took and took. Why, I asked the question that had troubled me for months. Why was Jake's approval always worth more than mine? Why was his financial irresponsibility acceptable while my stability was taken for granted? Dad was quiet for a long moment. I saw myself in him, he finally admitted. The charm, the shortcuts, the financial risks. Validating him was like validating my own choices. He looked at me directly. And you reminded me of everything I failed to be. Responsible, hardworking, successful through genuine effort rather than charisma. The honesty surprised me. That's actually helpful to hear. Your mother and I have been talking about this in counseling, so he added. Recognizing our patterns. How we enabled Jake because it was easier than enforcing consequences, how we exploited your sense of responsibility. You're in counseling. This was news to me. He nodded. Part of our financial plan includes family therapy through a community program. Turns out our money problems were really relationship problems in disguise. Inside, I could hear Mum laughing at something Jake had said, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. We're trying, Allison, Dad said quietly. Not just with money, but with everything. Being better people. Better parents even at this late stage. I see that. I acknowledged, feeling the tight knot of resentment in my chest loosen slightly. When we rejoined the others for dessert, Mum pulled me aside. Thank you for having us in your home, she said, eyes bright with unshed tears. I know we have a long way to go to earn back your trust. We're making progress, I assured her, surprised to find I meant it. Later, as we played board games around my new dining table, Jake took his turn acknowledging the past. Remember when I texted you about needing $5,000 for a ring for Natalie? He asked, shuffling cards. Hard to forget, I replied dryly. I never intended to buy a ring, sir, he confessed. I was in deep with online poker debts, scared out of my mind. He looked up from the cards. You shutting everything down was the wake-up call I needed. Probably saved my life, honestly. As they prepared to leave, Jake handed me a small envelope. It's not much, he said awkwardly. Just the beginning. Inside was a check for $300 with first repayment, written in the memo line, and a handwritten payment schedule for the future. You don't have to, I began. I do, he interrupted firmly. Not because you're demanding it, but because it's right. I want to be someone who pays his debts. After they left, I sat in my quiet living room reflecting on the journey from last Thanksgiving to now. The hurt hadn't disappeared entirely, nor had my caution about future financial entanglements with my family. But something fundamental had shifted. In them and in me. I had learned that sometimes love means saying no. That boundaries aren't walls but vital definitions of where one person ends and another begins. That helping isn't always helping if it enables destructive patterns. My family had learned that actions have consequences. That respect must be earned, not demanded. That genuine love includes accountability, not just unconditional support. The money hadn't been the real issue. It was what the money represented: power, control, respect, love. By shutting down the financial pipeline, I had forced a reckoning that money had masked for years. When a financial planning client called the next day asking how to handle family members, constantly requesting money, I shared the most important lesson from my experience. Love without boundaries isn't love at all, I told her. It's fear, obligation, or guilt masquerading as love. Real love includes respect for yourself and others, and sometimes that means saying no to people you care about. As I hung up, I realized I was finally practicing the financial and emotional wisdom I had long preached to clients. The journey had been painful but necessary, not just for my bank account, but for my soul. Sometimes you have to shut everything down to rebuild it right. What would you do if a family member demanded your financial support while treating you as less valuable than another family member? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and like this video. Remember, establishing healthy financial boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for both your well-being and the growth of those around you. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to address any financial imbalances in your own relationships.